Hi everybody, this is Brendan with Common Motor. It's common-motor.com on the internet, and today we're looking at our Category 6 second tier of specialty tools that you might need to use to make repairs on your vintage Honda motorcycle. All right, so in front of me here I have a selection of different specialty tools that I know I have used and you might find yourself needing to use in repairing your vintage Honda motorcycle project. Now this isn't everything that you might run into, but it is an interesting variety of things that, well, will help you accomplish a particular repair task on a particular part or system in the bike that needs special attention. A couple points or words of advice I've had in dealing with tools over the years. Definitely, if you borrow a tool more than twice, you need to buy the tool. That's just a good sign that, hey, I'm doing this type of work and I need to go ahead and invest and buy that tool for the job. And one-time use is okay. Buy two, pony up and get the tool you need to do the job. On those same lines, sometimes you're doing a job and you're going to do a workaround. Hey, I can get away with not using the specialty tool, and then you find yourself either spending a lot of time and effort to take the thing apart or put it together, and sometimes just ponying up and say, hey, I bought the tool. It makes things so much easier to do the job. And the few dollars you spend on the tool goes a long way in saving time, frustration, and potentially even the damage to a part or an assembly that if you try to do it without the tool can happen. So keep those things in mind when you were looking at specialty tools in order to make those specialty repairs. Because these motorcycles are assembled with nuts and bolts and screws, there are a lot of threads, and threads tend to sometimes be stripped or damaged because of heavy-handed previous mechanics or just metal fatigue. In particular, I have a spark plug here, and the spark plug hole in a cylinder head being stripped out is I can't say a common occurrence, but it does happen and it does have to be repaired. So you can find yourself needing something like these right here, which are called thread chasers, and they go in there and they clean out the threads and help straighten out threads that might be damaged and are somewhat salvageable. Sometimes if you can't do the job with these, you have to then actually make the repair to the cylinder head and use something like this, which is a specialty tap to not only enlarge the hole and cut new threads, but also to install in inserts like that to repair the threads, so you have some fresh things, or fresh threads to the spark plug to thread into. Now, besides spark plug holes on thread repair, there's all kinds of other threaded inserts and threaded assemblies on the motorcycle. A lot of M6, M8 bolts throughout the bike, especially in the engine, and of course those might be stripped as well. And having a repair kit where you have a tap and a threaded insert here, and an install tool to make that easier, and making repairs on threaded assemblies is a good thing. So depending what size you need, you have to buy the right inserts and tap and drill, etc. But don't be surprised if you run into an assembly that has a stripped thread and you have to repair a thread or two. It's not as daunting as you might think, as long as you have the right pieces and tools and you're patient with it. What I have here are two of the specialty tools for doing some internal engine work on the vintage Honda Twins. This right here is a rotor puller. So if you have to take the rotor off the end of the crankshaft for servicing, the starter clutch, let's say like on a 350, or removing the rotor to check it out with a weak magnet on a 450, etc. This is the tool that actually removes the rotor from the end of the crankshaft. Along with it is the oil filter specialty nut removal tool. So if you're going to be taking off the oil filter on one of the Honda Twins, the 175s through the 450s and 500Ts, inside the oil filter assembly is this really funky 4-prong nut. And this is the special tool that you use with a 3/8 drive ratchet and extension to actually remove that specialty nut off the end of the crankshaft so you can take that assembly apart. This tool also fits a lot of the clutch assemblies on the 4-cylinders like the 750s to take it apart. When you run across that funky nut, you'll know it, and this is the tool for it. These 4 different tools here are the specialty tools needed to remove the threaded bearing covers if you're going to be doing hub servicing and changing wheel bearings on the vintage Hondas. Now, depending on whether it's a front wheel one like this or a rear wheel, there's different sizes of tools for the job with these pin spanners. So again, you have to get the right size for your application, but man, this makes it so much easier just to be able to pop this into that threaded cover, and then you put your, in this case, this will be a 1/2-inch drive ratchet in there, and remove the cover and install the cover versus trying to do it any other way. These are electrical pliers, and they have very specific tasks. This one right here from KT Pro is a plier that does a lot of things. It's a wire stripper, it's a wire cutter, it's a little bolt cutter, and it can crimp on different types of terminals on the end of wires. Plus there's some more functions on it here. I can go into detail, but it's definitely a great tool for electrical work, and you really only need like one of these. That's a high quality one like this, which will last for years. But it doesn't do everything. With the Hondas, we happen to have this as a specialized wire crimper for crimping on new bullet connectors or new terminal connectors that use this style of crimp on it. Again, if you try to do something like this with a pair of needle nose pliers, you're going to come up with really mediocre results. Again, having the right tool where you can actually crimp the fastener on, or essentially crimp the terminal on, is going to make life a lot easier and cleaner. And we have a video, we'll link it below, that shows how we use these in action on doing electrical repair. But definitely one of these at bare minimum, but this is also a great one to have too for nice clean terminal connections. Speaking of electrical, along with the test light, which we talk about in our Tier 1 video, the next electrical tool that you might find yourself needing is a digital multimeter. Now, there's all kinds of brands out there, and they range in price anywhere from like 10 bucks on up to hundreds of dollars. I would recommend buying a little bit nicer one. The $10 budget ones are accuracies are a little bit questionable. This one right here seems to be a pretty solid one. One that has all the different kind of settings on it, whether it's AC voltage, DC voltage, resistance settings, makes things a lot easier in troubleshooting and diagnosing different things that are going on with the bike. Something I feel like is a must to have if you have a motorcycle, not just a vintage motorcycle, is a chain breaker kit or a chain breaker and riveter kit like we have here. A great kit like this one not only will help you take a chain apart, whether it's a drive chain or a cam chain, but also assemble it together, putting rivets on the end of a master link, or even putting on riveted plates. Lots of different sizes on press plates and anvils, as long as drive pins, make the job a lot easier, and it's all right here in a kit. So don't forget, if you break one of these pins here, you don't have to buy the whole kit, and the replacement pins are available because it does happen. For those of you who are brave and have decided you're going to tear into your engine and take it apart and do a rebuild on it, the tools that I have in front of me are tools that you're going to need in order to get that job done properly. We have some specialty measurement tools here, and I'll go through them real quick, as well as some other tools to disassemble the engine to make your life easier. This could almost be its own video, but we're going to do it real quick and talk about some of the things here. So starting with measurement, probably your number one measurement tool you're going to work with is going to be a digital caliper. This is super handy to take fast, fairly accurate, detailed measurements in both metric and in inches, should you need it. I use one of these all the time for fast reference. I keep one on my desk. I have one on my workbench, so a caliper is definitely a good one. It is more accurate than a ruler, but not as accurate as some of these other tools here, which you need that level of precision on if you're doing some internal engine measurements. Most notably right here, these are micrometers. Micrometers are gauged based on the range of the range size that you're going to measure between. For example, this one measures between 0 and 1 inch, and this one measures between 2 and 3 inches. So there's a couple different sizes of those depending on your measurement. Along with that goes some of these tools here. These are telescoping snap gauges, which are for measuring the internal diameter of a bore, so a cylinder bore, and its smaller counterpart here, small hole gauges, are used for measuring small hole diameters, much like a valve guide. So these combined together allow you to take high precision measurements on cylinder bores, valve guides, and other small assemblies that have a very exact measurement to it. If you're going to get really serious in the engine building, you might want to invest in a dial bore gauge, which does the same thing as snap gauges here, but it's a lot faster, especially if you're doing a lot of assemblies where you can accurately see, hey, how is this cylinder changing in diameter or in taper, things like that. Just a more accurate tool for faster measurements for doing more in-depth stuff, but at the bare minimum, these will get you covered. So another couple tools that you're going to run into in that engine rebuild process is going to be this right here, is a valve spring compressor for taking apart valve springs and valves off a cylinder head, with the exception being a CB450 or CL450 cylinder head, which doesn't need this, but anything that has a coil valve spring, a simple valve spring compressor tool like this will work for a lot of different engines across the board. Simple one like this pretty much does it for anything you need. This is a deglazing cylinder hone. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about cylinder hones online. We actually have videos showing how we use these in actions to just clean up a cylinder for freshen up a re-ring. These are different grits and different diameters depending on what engine you're working on. So you have to buy the right size, just like a drill bit for the engine application. Now, this is not for overbore. It is specifically for deglazing a used cylinder, putting a fresh surface on it, so when you put new rings back in it of the same diameter or the same bore size, you have a good clean surface for those rings to seat into. So this is just a snapshot of some of the more specialty tools that you might find yourself using if you're making different repairs on your vintage Honda project. Something to keep in mind with all this stuff is, your toolbox is kind of endless, and you'll continue to acquire more tools along the way. We mentioned it earlier, and there's some things here, or I should say things that we don't have here that you might find yourself using. Things like drills and drill bits, sandpaper, taps and dies, etc. And the list can go on and on and on. It's just going to depend on the nature of the task you're doing and how you're making that repair. But the good news is, as you acquire more tools and supplies in order to do those repairs, your knowledge continues to expand and your capability continues to expand. At the same time, your intimidation on doing these tasks starts to diminish because you realize, hey, I can make this repair. I can do this task at home with just a couple specialized tools to let me do the job myself, and some practice, so sometimes it's technique. The other point I want to make is the access to these tools. Now, we have a lot of them for sale on the Common Motor website, but in the past, some of this stuff was incredibly difficult to find. Either it wasn't manufactured anymore, or you had to know what kind of specialty vendor to go to find these tools. And with the age of the internet, or the internets, we should say, being able to access these tools and have them just delivered straight to you makes life so much easier, and it takes a lot of this kind of myth and mystery out of these type of repairs on your bike. With that said, this is Brendan with Common Motor, common-motor.com on the internets. Thanks for watching. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Subscribe to our newsletter via our website, and of course, subscribe to this YouTube channel down below. Don't forget to ring that bell, and we'll see you next time.
Honda, 4-speed shift, synchro mesh 2, 2 cam brakes mean safety for you. Honda, all another motors there doing 55 miles per gallon, 135. Honda.